Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Skeleton Key, and I have with me today my friend Caitlin. We are in some book clubs together, and as you will see as I go over the prompts for the mysterious MAYhem Readathon, which starts on May 15th and goes through the 28th. It's a 2-week readathon. This is the second annual. So I hope to make this a regular event, maybe eventually go month long. But as you will see from the prompts, there are some that really lend themselves to arthropod content. And my friend Caitlin is much more arthropod friendly than I am. So I brought Caitlin in to help out with that and provide some other really great suggestions for the 4 prompts. And the prompts are optional. To participate in the Mysterious MAYhem Readathon, really all you need to do is read something that has a mystery or mayhem in it and call it good. But if you want a little added fun, you can try to read something from one or all of these 4 prompts, and you can mix and match. You can use one book to cover all 4 prompts if you can swing that. But anyway, let's get into it. There are 4 prompts, and the first one is skeleton. And so for this, we're looking for a book that features somebody or something with an exoskeleton. And so here's where the arthropods come in. I will start off by saying I did go through my TBR and I found, I've got the background blurred, so it's hard to see, but this is Lord of the Flies, and it's got a big fly on the cover. And so that's an insect. It has an exoskeleton. I think, Caitlin, am I right that all insects, all arthropods have exoskeletons?
So that's what makes an arthropod is my understanding. Feel free to fact check though in this new and exciting world of ours.
That's my understanding. If I remember correctly from 7th grade biology class, but that was a long time ago. But this is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I have no idea. I know just enough about this to be familiar with the pop culture references to this. I've never read it. So this is my read, and it's a nice short book. I have no idea if there is actual fly content or if that's like metaphorical somehow. But there's a fly on the cover, and the fly is in the title. So I am counting it. And by the way, I am not the challenge police, so I'm not going to be checking up on people to see is that an arthropod or not. So what suggestions do you have for me, Caitlin?
Well, piggybacking off of Lord of the Flies, something just occurred to me. I hadn't actually thought that deeply about the title, but have you seen the TV series they have, I guess, on Paramount Plus called Yellow Jackets?
No, I've heard of it, a little bit about it.
So I got into it just today. This was the thing that happened this morning because I needed something to watch over coffee, and I got tricked into like, okay, we'll do one free episode, we'll see, and now I'm hooked. But Yellow Jackets is sort of a high school girl equivalent of Lord of the Flies, where basically like an airplane full of a high school soccer team traveling to nationals ends up stranded in the woods for 19 months. And so sort of that whole idea of like, how do they live? How do they survive? How do they eat everything? They've got to figure that out. And it just occurred to me now, like the title Yellow Jackets, that's the name of the team, but a yellow jacket is also an insect, like much like a fly. And so I hadn't actually thought about the significance of the name with that until just now when you mentioned Lord of the Flies. So yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Do you have another?
You want to know about some books that involve exoskeletons?
Yeah.
So one of them, this will probably be at least something that you're familiar with since we read the original book together in book club. There's a series. It started with the book Children of Time. I'm actually reading the sequel to that, which is Children of Ruin. So just to introduce something about Children of Time, Children of Time is a sci-fi story where the premise is there's this mad scientist who engineered a virus that she wanted to, give to apes to increase their intelligence, speed up sort of the evolution of their intellect. And due to some crazy happenstance, fun plot things, the apes don't end up getting the virus. Instead, a bunch of spiders get it. And the story chronicles, like, it goes back and forth between two perspectives. One is a generation ship full of like the last vestiges of humanity that's, kind of ruined itself, ruined the planet, trying to find another place to live. And the other kind of follows this like almost like Sid Meier civilization. Like, we kind of go into like, you get to see like snapshots of like the spider culture as it evolves. Like, they evolve like technologically, culturally, everything like that. And so I don't want to give any spoilers, but Children of Ruin follows the story, so where you get to learn more about the humans and the spiders. And then another interesting animal gets into this, where we end up getting super intelligent octopods. So not an exoskeleton, kind of a whole different biological set of things. But this series is super fascinating. I think if you really want a book that like involves like exoskeletons, seeing how the spider culture evolves like completely different, like their bodies are different, their communication is different, even space exploration is different. So like when they make spaceships, the spaceship, because their bodies, they can survive more, extremes of temperature and things just by sort of shutting down. Their space travel, everything is different. Communication, webbing, gender roles. I found it super fun to read a book where, because if you know much about spiders, spiders are the opposite of the patriarchy. They are animals that, the females generally tend to be bigger than the males, either by a little bit or a lot, depending whether you're talking about like tarantulas or orb spiders. But being a male spider is a whole different kind of oppression. You end up often being dinner, after mating. That's if you even get the chance to mate. Like, most of the time, male spiders, you're gonna end up dinner whether you mate or not. Like, for a female spider, like, they see you there, you're a mate and you're protein. So the whole idea is like sort of the spiders, like, there ends up as they evolve, like, there ends up being like a men's rights movement that is not a horrible thing on Reddit. It's an actual like movement for some sort of equality. So it's wild. The whole thing is really fascinating. And if you want to get into the perspective of what it would be like to be an animal with like an entirely different physiology and how a culture might come out of that, that is definitely the book series to go.
Yeah, and I did read Children of Time. I gave it 4 stars. I actually liked it.
I remember that on Goodreads. I was impressed.
Yeah, as a total arachnophobe, though, I will give a piece of advice to somebody who's like, I don't want to read about uplifted spiders. Listen to the audiobook. The narrator, and it's a good narration, but the narrator has this delivery that is a little detached. So you've got that sort of emotional detachment from these beings that are really scary to somebody like me. So it doesn't really get that gut disgust or fear. It doesn't trigger that nearly to the extent that I think if I had actually had to read with my eyeballs every single sentence, I probably would have put it down and given up. So yeah, do give the audiobook a try.
I liked I did the first book as an audiobook, and that's I'm doing the second one now as just regular paperback copy, and I do miss the narrator. I love, spiders and insects and things, so it's I don't need it for the detachment, but I think she did just a really excellent job with all the voices. I loved her Avrana Kern, the mad scientist voice, like all the spiders, like the little voices she did for them. Like it really, yeah, I definitely thought that the audio was definitely a treat on that one.
Yeah. And I don't have a copy of it, but speaking of spiders, I do know that if you like mystery and short stories, there is an Isaac Asimov collection of, I think it's Tales of the Black Widower. It probably has more than one, but there's one that I do know for a fact has a big drawing of a Black Widow spider on the cover. So that would count.
Ooh.
So, yeah. And then I do have sort of in reserve in case I probably won't get to it because Lord of the Flies is pretty short. But this is Clockwork Scarab. This is by Colleen Gleason, and it is a Stoker and Holmes novel. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I remember getting this from Elliot at book club. It's an ARC, but there is a Clockwork Scarab. So I think that counts as an exoskeleton, even though it's mechanical. So.
I also have a few more children's book recommendations related to exoskeletons.
Yay.
And so one of them is the only book that I was not able to have like a physical copy of to show. So I'm gonna hold up a thing on my phone. But something I wanna tell people, a recommendation I have that I kind of just recently discovered or rediscovered now that I have a child, is nonfiction children's books, like from like the 7 to 10 range, are like really one of the best kept secrets ever. Like I think with the internet now, like we have a tendency to like, okay, I want to learn about something, let me just look it up on Wikipedia, and it's like you kind of have to mine just a lot of data of things that it's like all the Latin names and subgenres and everything, and things you might not necessarily want. Like if you go to your public library and look for like any animal, a book on it, you can find a book that's got, basically like all kinds of pictures, fun facts, written in a way that you can digest and learn very easily about them, instead of like a long article about something that you're kind of scanning through and giving up on halfway through. To that point, one of the books that my 2-year-old picked out, this is way above her grade level, but like reading level, understanding concept level, but she picks books out by like what's on the cover. So she's super into scorpions because she's my daughter. And so one of the books that we got that I couldn't get because the library has it out right now, but it's Scorpions, Strange and Wonderful by Lawrence Pringle. This one has just gorgeous pictures of different kinds of scorpions, kind of introduces kids to like the life cycle of them, sexual dimorphism, where like the female scorpions, much like spiders, are bigger than the males. There's a really grisly picture of like a scorpion fighting with a gecko, which as the owner of like arthropods and geckos as pets, it's a little disturbing to think about, your pets eating each other. But again, I'm watching Yellow Jackets, so I'm getting a little more comfortable with the idea of cannibalism and stuff. So books open up whole new worlds, and so do TV series. But highly recommend that. And I've got a couple for the really younger set. These would be more like things to read to my kid that she'd get a lot out of at her age. There's a couple of is it Eric Carle or Carly? I should know this. I've got a kid, but he's got a couple really great books about insects. One of them being The Very Quiet Cricket, and another being The Very Busy Spider. The artwork is just super gorgeous in both of these. Lots of stuff like, they've got, cicada bugs. They've got just really beautifully illustrated stuff. Here's a Luna moth in here, which I think is just super pretty. This is one of my favorite pictures in the whole thing. Repetitive phrases for little kids. So yeah, this is why Stina had me on here, so I could gush about bug books and try to like contain myself from like shaking with delight.
See, I've got a couple other just quick mentions. So Brian doesn't think this counts, my husband Brian. But this is Owl Riders. This is actually I think the third book in the series. The first book is Owl Dance, but both books involve ornithopters, these little, mechanical flying machines. This is steampunk. It's Weird West. It's set in New Mexico. But yeah, they have flying machines. And in Owl Dance, they're shaped like owls. Yeah, it's great. Owl is one of my favorite animals. So, and then also Prey of Gods, and this one would also count for Code if you want to double dip on that. But this is set in South Africa. Yes, this is set in South Africa. It's a wild ride. It's in South Africa, the future looks promising. Personal robots are making life easier for the working class. The government is harnessing renewable energy to provide infrastructure for the poor. And in the bustling coastal town of Port Elizabeth, the economy is booming thanks to the genetic engineering industry. And that's another code word, which has found a welcome home there. Yes, the days to come are looking very good for South Africans. That is, if they can survive the present challenges. It's up to a young Zulu girl powerful enough to destroy her entire township, a queer teen plagued with the ability to control minds, a pop diva with serious daddy issues, and a politician with even more serious mommy issues to band together to ensure there's a future left to worry about. So there's all sorts of stuff, fun stuff in here, and it gets really bizarre and strange. And if you like dik-diks, which are these little tiny deer-like animals, there are lots of dik-diks too. So
I realized I recognized the title, and sorry, I was looking this up. This was one of the, I don't want to say rejects, that's such a mean word, but from our Strange Worlds book club back, I'm looking this up, like this is not a memory thing, this is me looking this up, but from our 2019 to 2020, this is one of the books on AI that we voted on and didn't pick. We picked Plum Rains instead. So this was the path not taken.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I mean, there are a few things. It's not a perfect book, and I think it's a debut novel, so it's got some of the stuff that you see in debut novels. But I enjoyed the heck out of it. But there is computer code in there, so yeah, it works for the code keyword prompt as well. My last exoskeleton is. And I don't exactly recommend this. Okay, there are a lot of people who love this.
No, not this one.
The History of Bees.
No,
it's a gorgeous cover. It's got bees. It's got. Yeah,
I should like. Here's the thing. I have not read this. I have read the third book in the series, and I'm like trying to finish it right now. The issue with the book is not the bees, it's the lack of bees. It's a very depressing book about the lack of bees. And
it's cli-fi, so climate change fiction. And it's got I think this one has 3 POVs. 3 different timelines. So this counts for changing setting. This counts for probably counts for genetic code, but also counts for ambiguous ending. I think all 3 of the books, it's a quartet. There's going to be a 4th book, but they do, I think, all have ambiguous endings. There are lots of people who absolutely love this, and they love all of them. My big issue with it is that it has lots of parent-child conflict angst, and I'm just not here for that. I don't know. It just does not appeal to me, and nothing gets resolved really. But if you want to read a really depressing book about lack of bees because climate change, the prose is gorgeous, but
I believe it based on the third book. I believe it. Like the prose is gorgeous, but it is and also just not just parent-child relationships, very bad parent-child, like basically parents that are not very good parents. It's very painful to read.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, it's like let's like take Cli-Fi and add like family trauma on top of it. Like, this wasn't masochistic enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the last thing I have for exoskeletons. So the next is the prompt for key, which is a code, which you can interpret a lot of ways, and I encourage broad interpretation. So I am going to be reading, and you'll recognize this, Caitlin. This is Girls Who Code.
Oh, yeah.
By Reshma Saujani. And it's nonfiction, and it's about empowering young girls in STEM and specifically computer coding. And it's written for a younger audience, but we read this in one of our book clubs. And well, I say we, everyone but me. I didn't finish it, so my goal is to finish it. So, especially if you have a young daughter who might want to get into coding, this is probably a good one.
I have I just thought of a book that I want to try to find while you talk about some books. So I'm gonna be out of the frame. I'm gonna be out of the frame for like a minute and a half or something.
Okay, I've got a few to talk about then.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, and this is kind of steampunky. In fact, this might be where I think the steampunk word or name of the genre got coined. I'm not exactly sure on that. But it's set in 1855. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing, powered by steam-driven cybernetic engines. So yeah, there's computer code in this. Okay, got something?
I have two things. One I had planned, and the other one, your book just inspired me. Because this is what happens when you have like non-neurotypical people on here. Is like it's like you invited the ADHD person to be like, ooh. I have I'll start with the adult book that I'd planned first, and then a children's book that popped in. So when you said code, the first book that came to mind was a book called Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill. This is a book that I'm actually in a statistics book club at CSU, where like basically like math nerds get together and we talk about statistics. But I chose this book. What this book is about is this is a lot about data algorithms, data mining, and a lot of sort of the loops and traps that people get caught in as a result of a lot of corporations and governments that are cash strapped, kind of farming out a lot of jobs to algorithms and AI. And a lot of stuff, I mean, just so many things about how it can be hard to find a job. Like if those weird personality tests that are part of job applications, and how people who are bipolar can get flagged on those, and how they're very hard to game. So like if you just pick the wrong answers on something, no matter how competent of a worker you are, you can basically get blacklisted from a lot of jobs. Talking a lot about how like things get perpetuated, like with prison recidivism, farming a lot of the decisions about that out. And sort of the thesis of the book is how this really just is a sort of thing that kind of just impacts the poor disproportionately and makes it hard for people who are poor to get out of traps they're in or even appeal their case. Where code comes from in this is basically the idea that a lot of the algorithms that make a lot of decisions about our lives are, considered, proprietary intellectual property. So if you want to try to appeal like, hey, why did I get rejected from this job? Why did I do this? You can't, there's no transparency with them. There's this black box code that, Facebook or Google or any of this like employee scheduling software and everything, like nobody's allowed to see. So there's a complete lack of accountability with a lot of the systems in our life. And I think we're increasingly seeing more and more of this, as we go on. So this is the book that made me think code for grownups. A slightly less depressing, or not slightly, much less depressing book I picked up about a year and a half ago for coding is a book I picked up for my toddler called If Then I Can Code. I love this book because it's a thing that introduces kids to the idea of cause and effect from a very young age. I'll just kind of read a little quick thing as an example. It's got a little toddler here with her dad at the park, saying, if I push this ball, there's a little flap inside, which is fun, then it rolls away. And then the other one says, that actually has a little bit of code right here that you can read, and then says, in coding, if-then statements are also called conditional statements. My toddler's not going to understand this part right now at her age, but it's kind of just basically equating a lot of like cause and effect things that happen in your life when you're a little kid with basically coding and programming. And so it's really cute. My favorite one, I'll show you my kid's favorite one. It's if I kick and scream. And what my 2-year-old does whenever she sees this is she goes, fuss. Ah! Then dad gives me a timeout. Says if me.kicking and screaming equals true, timeout. These statements are like rules the computer uses to make decisions.
Yeah, and I am married to a software engineer, and I have learned that you have to be very careful with if-then statements. Yeah, got to make sure you get those just right.
Yeah. I think we all operate by cause and effect, but I think some of us are just more, I don't know what the word for it necessarily is, but like it does rule a lot of our lives and our thinking, and some people are very, very literal with it, and you have to just keep on with that structure.
And I just figured out how to make the comments show up. So hi, Edie.
Hi, Edie.
So yay. Anyway, and let's see, I've got 2 left for code. This is the Rose Code. And I probably won't get to it because I'm a nut about reading books in order. And even though these are only loosely, these Kate Quinn novels, World War II novels, are only very loosely considered a series, and you can read them as standalones. And I've already read one of them, The Huntress, as a standalone. But this is the second book, so I will probably not read this month. But this is about code breaking in World War II. And there's also lots of great nonfiction. Recently, I read Codename Lease, which it's more just general spycraft. And that's, a true story biography of a very highly, I think, the most decorated spy of the war. But it's an amazing read. But there's also lots of stuff written about Bletchley Park. So anything along those lines. Oh, and I guess I do have another one other than Codex, but I'll get to that in a second.
I think I want to read this now that I'm looking this up. Now that you're saying this, my grandma worked for the Department of Defense now, but the War Department during World War II. So I am familiar with some of the story behind that. So this looks pretty cool.
Yeah. And then, going to a different kind of code. This is musical postcards for flute. But anyway, this is all music. Okay, it's not going to show it, but this is music. But music is a kind of code. I mean, if you don't know how to read musical notation, then you can't read it. So yeah. And I have been known to buy like the bound scores of symphonies. Like I have Beethoven's Fifth Symphony as a bound score, and I have been known to just read that like a book because I don't know, I see music more than I hear it, which is really strange for a musician, I think. But I see it and I hear it in my head, which is which is a good thing, but kind of strange. And then my last one is, and this is just to show you how much I'm not going to be following up and making sure it's like, well, does that count? This is Codex by Lev Grossman, and it has the word code in the title. A codex is not a code. I don't know that there is any coding related content in here, but if you want to just go with something that has the word code in the title, even if it's like part of another word, go for it. Okay, do you have any other code books?
I do not. I just added Rose Code to my Goodreads want to read list. So thank you so much for that recommendation.
Oh,
That seems like the kind of like summer read that I really need in my life right now.
okay. Let's move on to Mysterious. And that is with an ambiguous ending. Now, the problem with ambiguous ending is you don't know until you've got to the ending if it's ambiguous or not. So you're going to have to rely on recommendations or lists. And I pulled up a list on Goodreads of books with ambiguous endings. And of course, it also depends on what you consider an ambiguous ending. So on the list was The Bone Witch by Rin, and I don't know how it's pronounced, Chupeco or Chupeco. But this is, I don't really know a whole lot about it. But I have it on my reading list this month for Asian Readathon, and it's I think a coming of age story, and I think there's necromancy and all sorts of fun stuff. But it was on a Goodreads list that says it has an ambiguous ending, so I hope that that is correct. So I don't actually know. Okay, so what do you have?
When you gave me the categories, this was the hardest one for me, even though like I feel like ambiguous ending, there's so many books I've read with an ambiguous ending. It's like this should be easier, but it's like it's just so many books. It's like, what do you pick? So I had to kind of think, what was the ambiguous ending that I remember really being the biggest impact for a while, where I was like, whoa, what really happened here? So I kind of went back a ways to Life of Pi, which some people are familiar with, some are not. If you're familiar, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll give you a little bit of a teaser. This is the story of an adolescent boy who ends up stranded at sea with a tiger on a boat, which is an incredibly dangerous, situation to be in. So the story of his survival is, the theme of the book. What we find in the ending, and Stina kind of, I'll have her maybe talk a little bit about the concept of framing. I like books, but I know less about the literary terms for this. But what we find out in the end is we're forced to question the narrator's version of things, whether that's actually what really happened or not. I wouldn't necessarily call this, I don't know if this fits into the category of unreliable narrator. He doesn't, I would say that the character doesn't really, he doesn't really strike me like Pi doesn't really strike me necessarily as like unreliable. But I mean, he's going through something very traumatic. So trauma can impact how we see the world and where we're at with that. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. But as far as like ambiguous endings go, oh yeah, and I think, oh, that's right, we were going to do the spoiler alert banner, so I can go ahead and I can actually talk about this now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So all right, oh yeah, okay. So the Life of Pi, the story, involves him training this tiger to not kill him on a couple of boats, rationing out food, having to deal with like eating other animals. At one point, he finds this sort of island of algae that he's able to subsist on for a while, and eventually ends up crashing in like Central America, and the tiger goes into the jungle. And this is the story he's telling, but we find out that the story he's telling when he's at an infirmary in the country he landed. And an alternate version of things that might have happened might have been that some of the animals in the boat were not actually animals, but other people, and that in order to survive, cannibalism may have been a thing. And so the story, he sort of created this story and allegory to deal with the fact that he was having to eat other people and do terrible things to survive. So you don't actually, I mean, it seems more likely that it's the terrible ending, right? It seems more likely that it was people dying and not this, amazing kind of story with the animals. But yeah, okay. I'm gonna let because she's read this, so I think she has kind of a way she would like to talk about this that might give some clarity to this.
Let's see. How do I do this? Okay, there. Yeah, talking about the framing device, it is kind of it goes back. I know in the movie, I think it goes back and forth, but I think in the book, it's just bookended. And so you've got this frame of him being interviewed by, insurance companies and whatnot, while he's still in the hospital, and also by this other guy, sort of a spiritual person. And so this interviewing, these interviews form this sort of frame for the story, but it kind of helps you to think about what you're actually reading in the story. And then you get the other bookend of the frame, and then it's kind of bringing out these other possibilities to consider, and what's allegory and what's reality. And like you said, it's yeah, kind of makes you think, so even the beginning frame puts you in the mindset to kind of be thinking about what everything means, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I that's interesting. I haven't seen the movie. I've only read the book. I don't know why I never saw the film, but I didn't realize that the film did a trick with that. I kind of, just assumed it was like the book, where it was like they were going to tell the story and then, maybe have like terrible flashbacks at the end or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd still watch the movie. I think I don't know which I liked better. I was kind of meh on the whole thing, actually, myself. I wasn't crazy about it, but it is a good example of an ambiguous ending, and it's extremely popular. So, yeah, I would recommend it to a lot of people. So
I'm gonna keep this vague, but I'm trying to find there's a line. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read this, and I just thought of this before. There was the line about, there was something, people who've read this book more recently would, be better with this, but oh, here it is. Out of context, I'm not gonna say anything spoilery. That is the spoiler here, but there's a line in here. So tell me, since it makes no factual difference to you, and you can't prove the question either way, which story do you prefer? Which is the better story? The story with animals or the story without animals?
yeah.
And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great example of an ambiguous ending. And then let's see, I've got a couple. This one was also on that list. I have not finished. I'm about halfway through it. So if The Bone Witch turns out not to have an ambiguous ending, I will probably go with either The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is a dark academia thing, or In the Woods by Tana French. And I thought I had my copy up here, but and I'm about halfway through that one as well, but I had to set them aside for something else, and I'd love to get back to both of them. But I have read the second book after In the Woods. There's the second book in the Dublin Murder Squad series is The Likeness, which is an excellent book, by the way. And I think it has an ambiguous ending as well. But I can tell just from that book, and I've been told by other people that who were pissed off about the ending of In the Woods, but I can tell just from how the second book starts that yeah, it's ambiguous and nothing gets really figured out in the second book either. So depending on how you feel about that kind of ambiguous ending, you might not want to read In the Woods or The Likeness, but I loved The Likeness. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that one. And let's see. I've got a few more. Did you have other ambiguous ending ones?
No.
Okay. Well, I've got several more, and I'll just talk about them real quick so we don't run out of time. This is Ripley Underground, which is the second book in the Ripley series by Patricia Highsmith. I have not read this, but I've read the first one, which is The Talented Mr. Ripley. And it's about this guy who he kind of insinuates himself into a certain society of people and kind of takes over an identity. Yeah, he's a piece of work. And I don't know what it means about me that I kind of liked him, but but the ending of how that a lot of really sketchy things happen, and it's just fascinating watching him at work doing what he does, but the ending is not clear as to what's going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. Probably not this month, but someday. But yeah, the first book has an ambiguous ending. And this is a crime classic, and I'm not going to give spoilers because this is Malice Aforethought. Gosh, I probably ought to just turn off the blur and let you see all my clutter as I'm trying to rearrange my office. But there, Malice Aforethought by Frances Iles. This was written in like the 20s or 30s, and it's considered a classic of crime fiction, and it has an ambiguous ending, but a lot of people don't recognize that, or at least if they do, they're keeping mum about it, which is why I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. But they're like, what? The ending was the ending, and it spells everything out. And I'm like, oh, it so does not spell everything out. You have to pay really close attention throughout, I think, to really see what was going on. It's supposed to be about the perfect murder. This guy decides to kill his wife, and that's not a spoiler because he does that in like the first chapter. He's like, yeah, I gotta kill my wife so that I can bang this chick. And it's like,
Ew.
yeah, so it's but it's a really strong character study between, because it goes back and forth a lot between him and his wife, and it's like they're just both awful people. But it's supposedly about this perfect murder that he commits, and that's all I'm going to say. Just real quick, this Blake Crouch, Pines by Blake Crouch. This is the first of the trilogy. It's really creepy, and there's a TV show. I have not watched the TV show. I'm told that the first season or two really follows it pretty closely, and then it just kind of goes off on its own. But this FBI agent goes searching for a missing FBI agent and tracks him down to this little town in Idaho, and then weird things happen, and you get some closure of some stuff, but I say the ending poses more questions than it answers. So I would call that an ambiguous ending. I do want to finish the trilogy just because I have questions. This is Complicit by Amy Rivers, and Amy is a Colorado author. And do check out content warnings on this. It's a lot. Basically, a forensic psychologist who has been working on the East Coast returns to her hometown in, I think it's Alamogordo. Anyway, it's in rural New Mexico, and yeah, there's and she takes a job as a student psychologist at the high school, and students start disappearing, and some things are reminiscent of a murder that she didn't witness it, but she found the body when she was a teenager, and there's like history repeating itself. But yeah, the end of this book, I think this one's also a trilogy. There's closure to what's going on, but how things are going to play out, it really is up in the air, and it's kind of depressing, and it really hits you in the feels. It's a lot, so approach with caution, but it's excellent. And then my last on this is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. And this is a very, very short book. And it's, I don't want to say a whole lot about it because I'm not sure I understood it, and I'm not sure I was supposed to understand a lot of it. But so walking through his own house at night, a 15-year-old thinks he sees a person in full Blackfeet regalia step through a doorway. Instead of the people who could be there, his mother or his brother, the figure reminds him of his long-gone father who died mysteriously before his family left the reservation. When he follows it, he discovers his house is bigger and deeper than he knew. So it's very metaphysical, it's very mysterious, I think the whole story is very ambiguous, not just the ending. I know, Caitlin, I know you've read this, so any comments you want to share on that?
I love this one, like Mapping the Interior. I remember we talked a little bit in our book club about like it's sort of about geography, but it's the geography of one's own past and trauma. So kind of similar to The Life of Pi. It's sort of a person who is looking back on something and like, did this happen? Was this something metaphysical, or was this just something terrible that happened? It's very, for something that seems like it would be about like geography, like mapping, right? Like if most of the story is kind of claustrophobic, right? Like most of it takes place just sort of in home at night, and sort of just the home, the yard, what I don't even remember what the vehicle was in there, but yeah, so a change of setting. I feel like later on in the book, when we have for that, definitely like a pretty abrupt change from childhood. Childhood can feel change or a setting change, which I know I'm swaying into our, I think.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Oh, are you back? Uh-oh, I think I may have lost Caitlin. Are you back, Caitlin?
Yeah, can you hear me and see me?
Okay, yeah.
It doesn't seem like
back.
you can.
I can hear and see you. You froze for a bit. Okay, I think you're frozen again.
Am I unfrozen now?
You're unfrozen now.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and let's see. Did you have any other? You didn't have any other ambiguous endings, right? So we can go on to MAYhem, which is changing settings, and that can be all sorts of different kinds of changing settings. I didn't finish this. This is a Rover's story by Jasmine Warga, and I started it for middle grade March, and I never got around to finishing it. But it's a story about a Mars rover, and so it starts off on Earth, and this covers several decades. And so, of course, the rover ends up on Mars. I'm kind of bouncing off the writing style for this one, but I do want to finish it. So this is my pick for changing settings, because one planet to another, and then I've got several others. But what do you have, Caitlin?
So the one that's no, or can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi. Oh shoot.
Hi.
Okay. So there's a duology that I really like. It involves changing settings. It's by Justina Ireland. The first book of the series is Dread Nation, and the second is The Deathless Divide. I have Dread Nation somewhere. I was looking. I really wanted to show, because both of the covers of these are just really fantastic. Like, this is some of cover art that I really like. But the premise of this series is that there is a black girl named Jane, who during the Civil War, this is like an alternate history where zombies happen in the middle of the Civil War all of a sudden, kind of Walking Dead style. And as a result, the Civil War is sort of put on hold in favor of, like, hey, we all have to fight the zombies. So slavery is one of those things that was supposed to have ended but really didn't, and Jane is really caught in a lot of the middle of that. She ends up being in this like elite school for called, what is it, Miss Preston's combat school for Negro girls. And so what ends up happening is a lot of it's sort of like a lot of like the Jim Crow era anti I'm like struggling with words today, but it's sort of like the whole, like, even though slavery isn't legal, like, Black people need to have a jobs, right? They can't be vagrants. We can't have vagrancy. And so she's recruited to this elite school. And so a lot of Black girls at this time end up being these sort of guardians for white Southern Belle debutantes. So, that whole like ain't I a woman speech is really funny, because in this story you've got like juxtaposed with these like delicate Southern belles that, just are so fragile, being protected by, these girls who have, gone to this combat school and can use, rifles and scythes and things like that to cut down the hordes of infected. But the scene change, what ends up happening, I'm only going to talk about it in the first book, because Stina's read the first book, but not the second. Is there's an abrupt setting change in Dredgen, where the first half of the book takes place and then takes place in Kansas. And the reason I picked that, I really love changing settings in historical books. I also shoehorned Red Dead Redemption into this because it's my favorite video game ever. So I want to put this in every conversation. But a lot of what I loved about that video game is that it's not just set in the West, at least the second one. The first one is. But the second one, the setting change, you kind of span from like, post-slavery, like Reconstruction era South, to like a Saint Denis city that's like New Orleans, all the way to like the Great North, like Appalachian mining towns. You get to see kind of like where every place, just about everywhere in like the middle of the United States was at this time in like 1899. This takes place. What year does this take place in? I don't remember. I need to look that up. Somebody can look this up. But I really love the fact that we see how life would be different in, the Midwest as opposed to the Deep South, and how things are different, but how things change. In Deathless Divide, the sequel, there's another geographic shift, but that's all that I'm going to say about that one.
I think I have an idea, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I really second. I do want to read Deathless Divide. I've already got it on my Libro, I think, but I loved the first book. Yeah. So let's see. So I've got a few others for changing settings. This one, this is A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. Anyway, it's and this is a Pulitzer Prize winner, which a lot of times I don't get along with those. I'm just like, really, that's just pretentious. And a lot of people don't like this one. I loved it. But this changes it, and what a lot of people don't like is changes POVs, points of view. It changes time periods, and it's just this like swirl of time, and someone even like mapped it out and that's what it looks like, all of the chapters and points of view and relationships. It's like everyone is interrelated somehow to everyone else in the book, but it is really disorienting. And this probably has an ambiguous ending as well, but it's definitely got shifting settings, and yeah, it goes all over the world, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. Another one with changing settings, and this is sort of a road trip novel, sort of, but The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. And I never watched it as a kid, but a lot of people, that was like their favorite childhood movie. I've met. I actually attended a showing of the animated movie, and Peter Beagle was there, and it was just hearing his commentary on everything was pretty amazing. And there are graphic novel editions. So if you're looking for a really quick read, though, this is a pretty quick read. It's a bizarre kind of sense of humor, but yeah, it's a journey. So the setting does change both emotionally and physically, geographically. Did you have some others you wanted to talk about?
I had one that I just finished. I was kind of, didn't love it, didn't hate it, but I thought it was interesting, and a lot of people, that I know like it. I read a book called Velocity Weapon, which I believe was Megan O'Keefe was the author of that. That sort of like, was kind of pitched as sort of like a space opera, like in different times. I'll just give the beginning of the book, kind of where it takes place in like another, sci-fi universe where a gunnery sergeant named Sanda Grieve wakes up, after a battle, and, is on a ship with an AI and is being told that she's, unfortunately she's happened to recon 230 years in the future. The book POV of her brother at the time of the battle, a politician trying to find a way to get his sister home across space and time, but you realize, midway into it, that things are not what you thought that they were. Keeping it vague on that. Space opera wise, I kind of, I tend to like that. I liked the audiobook. I feel like the audiobook actually carried it a good way for me. And I'm glad I had that rather than the physical book. I got a little confused, and I think my interest would kind of dip in different points, and I think I missed some key things with it. So I don't think the impact of the story hit as well as it could have. But I don't think it was a bad book. I think it just I wasn't totally into it. But if you like space opera and changing timelines, that's one worth picking up.
Okay, good. And let's see, I've just got 3 more. One, and I don't know, I can swear, I had my copy of Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I had it here. I don't know where it went. But that's, classic. I don't know how many movies have been made of it now. I really did not like Kenneth Branagh's version.
A lot.
Oh, gosh. He lost me at oofs. It's like, no, you are not Belgian, sir. Quit trying. But anyway, Yeah, a lot of I've never seen the Albert Finney version. I'm told the Albert Finney version is the best, but I do.
I haven't seen that one either. I need to try that.
Yeah. I do recommend reading the original book. It's it's a another road trip kind of thing where it starts off in one place and it gets stuck at one point, but they do travel, and so the scenery does change quite a bit, and it's a little bit of an ambiguous ending as well. It's not strongly ambiguous. I mean, you know what's going to happen, but it's not really spelled out. One thing I like about that book is that it's an example where Christie was like ripping things from the headlines basically and writing books about it. There's this whole bit in there that it's like, oh, that's the Lindbergh baby. So it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's kind of, it's like CSI and SVU and all that. They didn't invent that. Oh, hey, here's this news story. Let's turn it into fiction. Now that's been around a long time.
I love that you picked this book for changing settings, just because like when I think changes of settings, I think abrupt changes, and I like the idea of like a train trip, slowly, moving. I had one of my favorite things a person's ever said when I used to teach. I taught a high school math class, and I remember it was Halloween, and like one of the kids came in dressed as Doctor Who, and I'm like, oh, okay, is that do you time travel? Do you have fun doing that? He's like, yeah, I do. And then another kid in the class just said, Miss, I travel through time very slowly every single day. It's one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, we live in the fourth dimension, so yeah. And that is another example. And I thought I had a time travel book picked out, but time travel, yeah, that's changing settings. The closest thing I have to that with me right here is Exit Plans for Teenage Freaks by Nathan Burgoyne. And you've read Light. Ooh. Yeah.
So yes, he did write Light.
And loved Light. And the setting doesn't really change much in that one. So it's a good book. I love Nathan Burgoyne. He's great. I know him from Book Crossing. I've never met him, but he's a Canadian author. But it's a little bit like Jumper. So basically this teen, he's got some serious issues going on in his life. And suddenly he discovers, that when he's like stressed or something, then he like jumps not so much in time, but in space. And he winds up, escaping to some other place. And so it's a little bit like Jumper, but I'm sure it's its own story. I have not read it yet. I'm really wanting to read that. So yeah, so he definitely changes settings very abruptly. And then I'm not sure why I picked up A Conjuring of Light instead of the first book, which is A Darker Shade of Magic. I have 2 copies of A Darker Shade of Magic. I have 2 different editions. But this is by V.E. Schwab, and the setting is there are 3 Londons. There's Red London, and there's red, Black, and Gray. Now, gosh, it's been so long since I read it. But the 2 main characters, Kel, who lives in the magical London, and then Lila, who lives in basically our version of London, although this is historical. It's a Regency setting, I believe. And yeah, and it's I love Lila. Now if you're not crazy about the not like other girls trope, there is some of that, but I don't know. I find it easy to forgive for Lila because I just love Lila so much. But there are these portals between the Londons, and then there's another London that has been kind of shut off, or I don't know. I'm trying not to give too much away, but yeah, you definitely change abruptly between the various Londons. All right, and that's pretty much all I have. And I know you need to get going here, Caitlin. We're about out of time.
I do. I'm impressed with your. I've never done one of these before, but I'm impressed with your time management on this one.
I've been trying. Yeah, I probably went a little over, but hope I don't ruin your day.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the like endless kind of go. Like again, I've never done these before. Like I definitely like listen to some podcasts that seem to go wherever. That like okay, I have to go to work at some point. This was a blast. Like I really appreciate getting a couple of good book recommendations out of this, and like getting kind of a blast from the past of like authors that I've liked in the past that I haven't kept up with. And it's like, oh, they've written something new. Well, yeah, of course they have. It's been like 8 years, but you know, so this was really neat for me to get an idea of some things to check out.
Oh, and let's see. And I just got another recommendation here. The City and the City by China Mieville. Yeah, that is that have you ever read that, Caitlin?
No, so I'm gonna confess I've never read any China Mieville, and I've had people recommending it to me since for like over 20 years now that I should read some of that. So it's that at some point that's got to be a bucket list. I got to read something by China Mieville.
Yeah, that one we read it for Strange Worlds, but that was I think before you joined Strange Worlds, and that it's a murder mystery sort of, but you've got these cities that are like they occupy the same physical space, but they're separated, and and so part of the book is just figuring out how does this even work? How do these cities occupy the same physical space, but you still have border controls, and you get like taken away if you talk to somebody in the other city, and yeah, it's bizarre, but I loved it. It was really good. Thank you for that recommendation.
I might have to read this before for our Strange Worlds book club that we're in. That's when we read the Ballad of Parallel Waves. That's going to be I think that would be an interesting comparison, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, so I haven't started.
Yeah, we're reading that in August, so I'm adding this to my want to read list.
Yeah. And
this doesn't feel like a beach read, but I might get it done.
Yeah. But any other recommendations, Edith? But anyway, yeah, I'll put I think I've put some information in the description. I need to go update the description to make sure there's good solid information about the Readathon in the description for the video. So after a little while, this will pop up as replayable. So you can have, let's see. Not right now, but yeah, but thank you for being here and weighing in. It was great to see you. And yeah, and so anybody in the comments, anybody wants to drop some more recommendations in the comments later, that would be awesome. Especially the ambiguous ending, because like I said, you have to depend on other people to tell you whether it's ambiguous before you start it. But yeah, but I'll make sure that that everything gets updated. I plan to go back to shorts on YouTube for during the Readathon, and then probably wrap up with another live show. Maybe have a live show in the middle. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. This is my first time doing. Yeah, I did a little test run of a live show last night, and so so this is my first time actually having a guest or anything. But I think this went pretty well. I had fun, and I'm very grateful to have Caitlin here and have an audience and everything. So, but yeah, just keep an eye on. Yeah, thanks. Keep an eye on my channel for updates starting the 15th through the, what is 2 weeks? 28th? 15th plus 14th. 28th. So, I'll probably pop in on, I still have some activity on Twitter. Twitter is just kind of disintegrating. So I don't know how much longer that will last. It might not last the month. I don't know. But also, I think I've popped down in the description my my Mastodon address. But if not, I'll make sure that my Mastodon. I'm trying to switch to Mastodon. So we'll see. I'm not very good at it yet. But anyway, thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing comments and seeing how everyone goes with the readathon. Bye.
Yeah.